Jaylen Waddle, maybe his comp, maybe if things pan out, is Tyreek Hill. I think it's a legitimate question in this NFL. Who would you rather have, Marvin Harrison in his prime or Tyreek Hill? I mean, those are there. That's the upside, but still. But not that long ago, like, I don't know, like the last several years
I'll
even.
Take either.
You could find – what's that? Yeah, right, yeah. No one's complaining. You could find – of course, you could find real game-changing talent later in the draft. We see Pro Bowl and All-Pro caliber talents in the second round, and much later even. Are you saying that's changing? Is it going to be harder? Like, you didn't find guys who could pressure the quarterback from the outside much later in the draft. You had to take those guys early. But is this changing now? Or if you want a game-changing wideout, are you going to have to grab them up high?
I don't know necessarily that you have to in the top 10. There's also depth behind these guys. I mean, anyone who watched Florida football this year, Kadarius Toney is a special playmaker. He's a little bit like a Jaylen Waddle, where he's not your traditional, X wide receiver on the perimeter. You can play him outside. You can move him in the slot. You can move him in the backfield. He's just an offensive weapon, and he creates a lot of plays just with the ball in his hands. Rashad Bateman from Minnesota is probably going to be a second-round pick. Reminds me a lot of Juju Smith-Schuster for Pittsburgh. He's going to come in. He's going to run a 4.56. Everyone's going to say, he doesn't have the speed, he doesn't have the traits, but he's going to be ready to go. He's a big, sturdy, physical receiver who goes up and makes plays when the ball's in the air. So there are a lot of really good wide receivers in this class. Certainly you want to get one of the top three we talked about with Chase, Smith, and Waddle. But if you don't, there are plenty of guys to get late in the first and into the second and third rounds.
All right, Todd, you touched on this just a little bit earlier, but I want to go back to it because you have the Panthers trading up for Trey Lance. Why would they draft him over Justin Fields?
Well, first of all, talking to Matt Rule and the Carolina defensive coordinator and another assistant coach, they all reiterated the same point. We lost 8 games by 1 score last year. We feel like we have a roster that is playoff ready if we have the quarterback that can lead that drive in the fourth quarter. And so they had Mac Jones at the Senior Bowl a week, and I think they really liked him. And how could you not like what you saw from him during practice during those 3 days in Mobile, Alabama? But I think Trey Lance and also Justin Fields, they provide a little bit more in terms of extending plays and just being playmakers. And I went with Lance slightly ahead of Fields. And everyone's yelling at me, like you talked about with social media, saying, well, how could you put Lance ahead of Fields and you're down on Fields? It's not the case. They have identical grades. Fields is going 4 overall, so we're talking about a top 5 pick. But I just think Lance, they have very similar skill sets in terms of being big, sturdy, strong-arm quarterbacks that are mobile and can create after the initial play breaks down. But I think Lance is able to process a little bit quicker. He didn't play this past year, just the 1 game. It wasn't an opt-out. It was because it was at the FCS level. But if you go back and study the 2019 tape of him, he's got a chance to be special. He just needs some time to develop and the right coaching staff and the right situation around him. But I think Lance and Fields are, as I said, kind of that third tier of quarterbacks behind Lawrence and Wilson, but they're not going to last on the board very long. I'll be surprised if either of them are available past pick 10.
Todd, I understand why Jacksonville would say, all right, we have Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson's available, but same program. If anything, Trevor Lawrence looked even better earlier in his college career than Deshaun Watson. We have him on a rookie deal. Deshaun Watson making $160 million. We're good. But is there any other team drafting in the first round where they wouldn't offer that quarterback, like the quarterback, Zach Wilson or whomever, or Justin Fields, is such a sure thing that they wouldn't be better off offering that plus stuff in a trade for Deshaun Watson?
How much is it going to cost, Max? I mean, that's the whole thing. It really is. And, the Jets are sitting there at number 2. They have 2 first-rounders this year. They have additional third-round picks this year and next year. They have 2 first-rounders next year. They have more draft capital this year and next year than any other organization in the league. And there's a really good chance they wind up moving Sam Darnold. And maybe that could be part of the solution in terms of getting a trade done with Houston, is being able to send a viable quarterback prospect and player and a guy who can be really good if he has the pieces around him, which he has not had with the Jets. So I think that the Jets have the best opportunity in terms of draft capital and the situation, but I don't know that they're willing to give up 3 first-rounders and Sam Darnold. They've built to get here so they can build their own roster. Are they going to give up all of that to bring in Deshaun and then basically lose your first-round picks this year and next year? It's going to be interesting to see. The draft really starts at number 2 with the New York Jets and their decision.
Can I offer
Todd, you got some bold
Houston the
predictions,
11th
obviously.
pick and Daniel Jones, perhaps?
Daniel Jones is
Sure,
interesting.
Max. Yeah, Todd, add that to your mock draft.
Listen, Daniel Jones could get moved. You never know. I mean, Daniel Jones is interesting. What happens with Dak Prescott in Dallas? Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco. The Bears need a quarterback. They're sitting at 20. The Colts need a quarterback. They're at 21, both talking to the Eagles about Carson Wentz. So there are so many dominoes that have to fall between now and the draft. And then we'll start to see a clearer picture of where these quarterbacks in the draft could wind up going. But there's going to be so much movement between now and late April that it's hard to project because we just don't know who the starting quarterbacks of these 32 NFL teams are going to be.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.